Bullets whizzed past Sergeant James Mitchell as he and his platoon scrambled for cover on the blood-soaked sands of Omaha Beach. Amidst the chaos of D-Day, the deafening roar of gunfire and the screams of wounded comrades, they fought to secure a foothold in enemy territory, unaware that their bravery would etch their names into history. Sergeant James Mitchell stood on the deck of the troop transport ship, gazing out at the vast expanse of the English Channel. The cool breeze ruffled his uniform as he watched the horizon, a mixture of anticipation and anxiety churning within him. He knew that the long-awaited invasion of Normandy was about to begin. Around him, his fellow soldiers were busy with their final preparations. The air was charged with tension as they checked their equipment, tightened their helmet straps, and exchanged nervous glances. They were a diverse group of men, brought together by the common purpose of liberating Europe from the grip of Nazi Germany. James had been through countless training exercises, but this was different. This was the real thing, D-Day. The day that would mark the beginning of the end of the war, or so they hoped. The ship's loudspeaker crackled to life, and the voice of their commanding officer echoed across the deck. "Men, this is it," he said, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "We've trained long and hard for this moment. We know the risks, but we also know what's at stake. We're here to free Europe from tyranny, and we will not fail." James felt a surge of pride as he looked at the faces of his comrades. They were a band of brothers, ready to face whatever lay ahead. He had seen their determination during training, and he knew they had what it took to succeed. As the ship continued to move toward the French coast, James couldn't help but think of the loved ones back home. His wife, Sarah, and their young daughter, Emily, were never far from his thoughts. He had promised to return to them, and he intended to keep that promise. The hours passed slowly, the tension on the ship building with each passing minute. James tried to stay focused, to push aside the fear that threatened to creep in. He knew that fear was the enemy, more dangerous than any German soldier. Finally, as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, the ship's engines roared to life. The moment had come. James and his fellow soldiers filed out onto the deck, ready to face the unknown. The fate of the world rested on their shoulders, and they were determined to do their duty. As they approached the landing craft that would take them to the shores of Normandy, James thought of the countless soldiers who had come before them, who had sacrificed so much for the cause of freedom. He knew that they were part of something much larger than themselves, a historic moment that would be remembered for generations to come. With a deep breath, James boarded the landing craft, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and resolve. The invasion of Normandy had begun, and there was no turning back. They were the tip of the spear, and the world was watching. The landing craft bobbed on the choppy waters of the English Channel as Sergeant James Mitchell and his fellow soldiers clung to the sides. The roar of the boat's engines and the deafening sound of naval gunfire filled the air. James tightened his grip on his rifle, his knuckles white with tension. The sky was overcast, with dark clouds casting a somber shadow over the invasion force. The distant rumble of thunder seemed to echo the unease in the hearts of the men. They knew that the success of the operation depended on the element of surprise, and yet the weather was doing its best to betray them. As the landing craft approached the French coastline, the German bunkers and fortifications came into view. The enemy positions seemed impregnable, their machine guns and artillery waiting to unleash hell upon the approaching Allied forces. James stole a glance at his comrades. Their faces were pale, but their eyes burned with determination. They had trained for this moment, and now it was time to put that training to the test. The order came over the intercom to prepare for the landing. The soldiers checked their equipment one last time and exchanged silent nods of encouragement. James couldn't help but think of the briefing they had received before departing England. The odds were stacked against them, but they were here to make history. The landing craft hit the shore with a bone-jarring thud, and the ramp at the front of the boat came crashing down. Without hesitation, the soldiers surged forward, charging onto the blood-soaked sands of Omaha Beach. The deafening roar of gunfire filled the air as bullets whizzed past them. James and his men sought cover behind whatever obstacles they could find: beached landing craft, hedgehogs, and the bodies of fallen comrades. The beach was chaos, a nightmare of smoke and fire. James yelled orders to his men, directing their movements and urging them forward. The machine gun nests on the bluffs above them were the primary target. They had to be silenced if any progress was to be made. The battle raged on, and the casualties mounted. James saw friends and comrades fall, their faces contorted in pain or frozen in death. It was a brutal reminder of the price of war, and he felt the weight of responsibility as he led his men into the inferno. Through sheer determination and the support of their fellow soldiers, James and his platoon managed to reach the base of the bluffs. They fought their way up, inch by agonizing inch, driving the German defenders back. As they crested the bluffs, the enemy positions came into view. The air was thick with the acrid scent of gunpowder, and the sounds of battle were deafening. But James and his men pushed forward, their rifles blazing. The tide was beginning to turn. The Germans, overwhelmed by the relentless assault, began to retreat. James watched as the enemy soldiers, their faces twisted in fear, fled before the advancing Allied forces. It was a hard-fought victory, won at a heavy cost. As James looked around at the battered and exhausted faces of his men, he knew that they had achieved a crucial breakthrough. The beach was secured, and the path was clear for the Allied forces to push deeper into Normandy. But the battle was far from over. There were more challenges ahead, and the soldiers knew that they would need every ounce of their determination and camaraderie to see them through. Sergeant James Mitchell's platoon had secured a foothold on Omaha Beach, but the battle was far from over. They huddled behind the cover of the bluffs, taking a moment to catch their breath as the chaos of the landing still raged on below. Around them, the sounds of war echoed in every direction. Artillery shells screamed through the air, explosions sent plumes of sand and smoke into the sky, and the constant chatter of machine gun fire filled the air. The beach was a scene of carnage, strewn with the wreckage of landing craft and the bodies of fallen comrades. James wiped the sweat and grit from his face, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew that the success of the mission depended on pushing inland and securing a beachhead for the advancing Allied forces. The German defenders still held strong positions on the bluffs above, and the platoon needed to regroup and continue the assault. "Listen up, everyone," James shouted over the cacophony of battle. "We've secured this beach, but we've got a long way to go. We need to keep moving and take those bluffs. Stick together, watch each other's backs, and follow my lead. We can do this." His men nodded in response, their faces grim and determined. They had trained for this moment, and they trusted in James's leadership. With renewed purpose, they left the relative safety of the bluffs and moved forward, their boots sinking into the sand. The platoon encountered pockets of resistance as they pushed inland. German soldiers, dug into defensive positions, fought fiercely to hold their ground. The close-quarters combat was brutal, and the soldiers had to rely on their training and their bonds of camaraderie to survive. James barked orders, directing his men with precision. They moved as a unit, covering each other and inching closer to the enemy positions. The staccato of rifle fire and the concussions of grenades filled the air as they fought their way forward. Amid the chaos, James couldn't help but think of the loved ones waiting for them back home. He thought of his wife, Sarah, and their young daughter, Emily, and the promise he had made to return safely. It was that promise that fueled his determination, that kept him pushing forward in the face of danger. Hours felt like days as the platoon slowly gained ground. The Germans put up a fierce defense, but the relentless determination of the Allied soldiers could not be denied. With each enemy position they cleared, they moved one step closer to their objective. As the sun began to set on that fateful day, the platoon finally reached the summit of the bluffs. The enemy positions had been taken, the German defenders either captured or in retreat. The beachhead was secure, and the path was now clear for the advancing Allied forces. James looked out over the beach, his chest heaving with exhaustion. The cost of victory had been high, with many of his comrades lost in the battle. But their sacrifices had not been in vain. They had achieved their mission, securing a crucial foothold in Normandy. As the soldiers regrouped and caught their breath, James knew that the battle was far from over. There were more challenges ahead, more battles to be fought, and more sacrifices to be made. But they were united in their purpose, bound together by their determination to see the mission through. With the bluffs secured, Sergeant James Mitchell's platoon continued their relentless advance inland, leaving the horrors of Omaha Beach behind. Their next objective was to break through the enemy's beachfront defenses and establish a more secure perimeter. As they moved forward, they encountered obstacles designed to halt any Allied advance. The Germans had planted a series of hedgehogs, mines, and barbed wire barricades in the sand, creating a deadly maze that slowed their progress. James knew they had to act swiftly. The longer they lingered on the exposed beach, the more vulnerable they became to enemy fire. He gestured for his men to follow him, and they began the arduous task of dismantling the obstacles while under fire. Bullets whizzed past them as they worked, their hands moving quickly to clear a path. The soldiers relied on each other, covering their comrades as they exposed themselves to danger. It was a testament to their training and camaraderie. As they pushed forward, the platoon encountered the first of the enemy's beachfront bunkers. German machine gunners opened fire from the fortified positions, forcing the men to seek cover. James knew they couldn't advance without neutralizing those nests. He called for a volunteer, and Private Jackson stepped forward. With James providing covering fire, Jackson made a daring rush towards the closest bunker, lobbing a grenade inside before diving for cover. The explosion signaled success, and the platoon cheered as they moved forward. The battle continued, bunker by bunker, as the platoon cleared each one with a combination of firepower and well-placed explosives. The casualties mounted, but they couldn't afford to falter. The success of the entire operation depended on their ability to secure the beachfront. Hours passed, but the platoon's determination did not waver. The constant roar of artillery and the thunder of naval gunfire served as a grim reminder of the larger battle raging around them. Finally, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the platoon reached the last of the beachfront defenses. The fortified position was heavily guarded, with machine guns and artillery pieces aimed out to sea. James knew this was their final challenge. He called for a concentrated assault, with every available weapon directed at the enemy's position. Grenades, rifles, and machine guns all focused their fire, creating a hail of destruction. The enemy defenders fought fiercely, but they were no match for the overwhelming firepower of the determined platoon. Slowly but surely, the defenses crumbled, and the Germans were forced to surrender. As the last resistance on the beachfront was crushed, the platoon took a moment to catch their breath. The beach was now secure, and the path was open for the rest of the Allied forces to land and join the battle. Sergeant James Mitchell looked out at the beach that had been the scene of such intense struggle. The cost had been high, and the faces of fallen comrades haunted his thoughts, but they had achieved their mission. Omaha Beach was theirs, and the liberation of Europe had taken a crucial step forward. With a sense of grim satisfaction, the platoon began preparations for the next phase of the battle. There was still much work to be done, but they were united in their purpose, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With the beachfront defenses finally overcome, Sergeant James Mitchell's platoon pressed forward, moving inland. The battle for Omaha Beach had been fierce, but they knew that their mission was far from complete. As they advanced, the landscape changed from the open sands of the beach to the narrow, winding roads of the French countryside. The soldiers moved cautiously, aware that the Germans could be lurking around any corner. The sound of distant artillery fire and the rumble of tanks in the distance served as a constant reminder that the enemy was still very much present. The platoon knew they had to secure their beachhead and expand their perimeter to allow more Allied forces to land safely. As they moved deeper into Normandy, the soldiers encountered French villagers who had endured years of occupation under German rule. The looks of relief and gratitude on the faces of the villagers were a stark contrast to the devastation of the battlefield they had just left behind. The platoon did their best to reassure the villagers, providing them with food and supplies and promising to protect them from any remaining German forces. It was a small but meaningful gesture in the midst of war. The soldiers also encountered resistance from scattered pockets of German troops who had retreated from the beachfront defenses. These enemy soldiers fought fiercely, determined not to yield an inch of ground. The battles that followed were intense, with both sides trading gunfire and artillery barrages. The platoon relied on their training and their unity, moving as a coordinated force to eliminate the enemy threats. The advancing Allied forces faced challenges beyond just the German soldiers. The rugged terrain of Normandy and the maze of hedgerows and stone walls made progress slow and difficult. Every field and every village could potentially hide an ambush. As they moved forward, the soldiers couldn't help but think about the larger picture. They were part of a massive Allied invasion force, and the success of the operation relied on their ability to secure their objectives and push the Germans back. With each passing day, they advanced deeper into Normandy, encountering both enemy resistance and the grateful welcome of liberated French towns. The road to victory was long and treacherous, but the soldiers remained resolute. As the sun set on another day of hard-fought battles, Sergeant James Mitchell and his platoon set up a defensive perimeter in a small French village. The weary soldiers knew that the battle was far from over, but they took comfort in the knowledge that they were making progress. They had achieved their initial objectives on Omaha Beach and were one step closer to liberating France and ultimately defeating Nazi Germany. The road ahead was uncertain, but they were united in their purpose and determined to see the mission through to the end. Sergeant James Mitchell's platoon had been on the move for days, pushing deeper into Normandy, encountering enemy resistance, and clearing the way for the advancing Allied forces. The battles had been fierce, and the toll on both men and equipment was evident. As they moved through the French countryside, the soldiers could see signs of the German retreat. Abandoned equipment, destroyed bunkers, and hastily dug trenches were scattered along their path. It was clear that the enemy was in full retreat. The platoon had received word that Allied reinforcements were on their way, and they pushed forward with renewed determination. They knew that every inch of ground they gained was a step closer to victory. One evening, as they made camp in a small village, a messenger arrived with news. "General Eisenhower is coming," he announced. "He wants to meet with the men who secured Omaha Beach." The soldiers exchanged glances, a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation filling the air. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the supreme commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force, was a legendary figure, and the opportunity to meet him was a rare honor. The next day, General Eisenhower arrived in the village, accompanied by a small entourage. He was a tall, imposing figure, his presence commanding respect and admiration. The soldiers snapped to attention as he approached. Eisenhower's gaze swept over the weary but determined faces of the men who had fought so hard on Omaha Beach. "At ease, soldiers," he said, his voice steady and reassuring. "I wanted to personally thank each and every one of you for your bravery and dedication. You have achieved a great victory, and you have my deepest gratitude." He went on to speak of the importance of their mission, the liberation of France, and the ultimate defeat of Nazi tyranny. His words were inspiring, filling the soldiers with a sense of purpose and pride. As General Eisenhower spoke, he walked among the men, shaking hands and asking about their experiences on the beach. He listened to their stories, their struggles, and their hopes for the future. Sergeant James Mitchell had the opportunity to speak with the general briefly. He shared the story of their hard-fought advance from Omaha Beach, the challenges they had faced, and the sacrifices they had made. General Eisenhower nodded, his expression one of understanding and appreciation. "I know the road ahead will be difficult," General Eisenhower said, "but I have every confidence that with men like you leading the way, we will prevail. Your courage and determination are an inspiration to us all." With a final salute, General Eisenhower left the village, leaving behind a sense of hope and purpose that burned brighter than ever in the hearts of the soldiers. They knew that victory was within reach, and they were more determined than ever to see it through. As they continued their advance through Normandy, the soldiers faced more battles and challenges. But they carried with them the memory of General Eisenhower's visit, a reminder of the importance of their mission and the hope of a brighter future. The road to victory was long and treacherous, but they were united in their purpose, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The liberation of Europe was within their grasp, and they would not falter in their quest to achieve it. As Sergeant James Mitchell's platoon continued their advance through the Normandy countryside, they encountered more pockets of resistance from retreating German forces. The battles were fierce, but the soldiers had grown battle-hardened and resolute. They were determined to see the mission through to the end. With each passing day, the Allied foothold in Normandy expanded, and more reinforcements arrived to bolster their ranks. The soldiers could feel the momentum shifting in their favor, a sense that victory was within reach. As they liberated more French towns and villages, the soldiers were met with jubilation and gratitude from the local residents. The sight of Allied troops marching through the streets, flags flying high, was a symbol of hope and liberation. One day, as they reached the outskirts of a town, they were met by a group of children who ran out to greet them. The children's faces lit up with joy as they handed out flowers to the soldiers, a simple but powerful gesture of thanks. The soldiers smiled and accepted the flowers, their hearts warmed by the innocence and resilience of the young faces before them. It was moments like these that reminded them of the importance of their mission and the impact they were having on the lives of the people they were liberating. As they pushed deeper into Normandy, the soldiers encountered more German resistance, including heavily fortified positions and determined defenders. But they were relentless, using their training and teamwork to overcome each obstacle. One particularly fierce battle took place in a dense forest, where the Germans had dug in and were determined to hold their ground. The platoon fought valiantly, clearing the forest of enemy soldiers and securing a vital supply route for the advancing Allied forces. With each victory, the soldiers felt a growing sense of accomplishment and pride. They knew that they were part of something much larger than themselves, a historic effort to free Europe from the grip of Nazi tyranny. One evening, as they made camp in a liberated village, the soldiers gathered around a campfire. They shared stories of their experiences, the battles they had fought, and the comrades they had lost. There was a sense of camaraderie and brotherhood that ran deep among them. Sergeant James Mitchell couldn't help but reflect on the journey they had undertaken. From the chaos of Omaha Beach to the liberated towns of Normandy, they had come a long way. The cost had been high, and the memories of fallen comrades weighed heavily on their hearts, but they also carried with them a sense of triumph. They had achieved their objectives, secured a beachhead, and pushed the Germans back. The liberation of Europe was in progress, and they were playing a crucial role in that historic endeavor. As the soldiers settled in for the night, their thoughts turned to the future. They knew that more battles lay ahead, more challenges to overcome, but they were united in their purpose, determined to see the mission through to the end. The road to victory had been long and treacherous, but they had traveled it together. They were bound by their shared experiences, their unwavering determination, and their commitment to a world free from tyranny. And as they looked up at the stars that night, they knew that they were part of something greater than themselves, a triumph of unity, courage, and the indomitable human spirit. Sergeant James Mitchell and his platoon had achieved a hard-fought victory on Omaha Beach, securing a beachhead and pushing deep into Normandy. Their resolve had been tested, their courage proven, but they knew that their mission was far from over. As the days turned into weeks, the soldiers continued their advance through the French countryside. They encountered scattered remnants of German forces, stubbornly clinging to their positions and determined to slow the Allied advance. One of the greatest challenges they faced was the ever-changing terrain of Normandy. The narrow, winding roads and thick hedgerows made for difficult and treacherous advances. Each village they liberated, each field they crossed, brought new challenges and new battles. The soldiers had become experts at urban warfare, clearing buildings and towns of enemy soldiers with precision and efficiency. The sound of gunfire and the rumble of tanks became a constant backdrop to their lives. Throughout it all, they maintained a sense of camaraderie and unity that had been forged in the fires of Omaha Beach. They relied on each other, trusted each other, and knew that their strength came from their collective determination. But there were moments of reflection as well. The soldiers couldn't help but think about the loved ones they had left behind, the families waiting for their return. Letters from home provided a connection to the world they had left behind, a world that seemed both distant and precious. As they pushed deeper into enemy territory, they encountered moments of triumph and moments of heartache. Each battle won came at a cost, each victory a reminder of the sacrifices they had made. The memory of fallen comrades weighed heavily on their hearts. The soldiers also faced the challenges of supply and logistics. They relied on a steady stream of resources to continue their advance, and the logistical efforts of the Allied forces were vital to their success. Despite the difficulties, they persevered, knowing that their mission was too important to falter. Through it all, Sergeant James Mitchell remained a steady and inspiring leader. His unwavering commitment to the mission and his dedication to his men earned him the respect and admiration of all who served under his command. As the weeks turned into months, the soldiers pressed on, their determination unwavering. They knew that the liberation of Europe was within their grasp, and they were prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The path ahead was uncertain, but they were united in their purpose, ready to endure whatever trials and tribulations awaited them. The road to victory was long and arduous, but they would travel it together, bound by their shared experiences, their unbreakable bonds, and their commitment